Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Hello and welcome to the Australian Finance Podcast. I'm your host, Kate Campbell, and today I'm here with the wonderful Glen James. Welcome to the show, Glen.
Hey, Kate, thanks for joining me, and hello to all your listeners.
It's great to have you back on the show. Now, we're here to celebrate your brand new book. You've released a few now, The Quick Start Guide to Investing. Learn how to invest simpler, smarter, and sooner, by Glen James and Nick Bradley.
Yeah, it's my best work, Kate. I mean, I threw everything at this stuff because, your audience and my audience, very similar, right? We ask our audiences like what they want as their main goals. And over the last, I think we're into like our 7th year of the podcast, and you're probably similar.
We start of 2019,
we were start of 18. Yeah. So we've probably got the same type of people listening. The number one thing that my listeners want to do is invest in shares.
Yeah.
And we still, as a podcast, as a Instagram, as a Facebook group, all that stuff, we're still always having new people come and say, how do I get started? And this book is how to get started. But as well, like you mentioned, simpler, smarter, and sooner, there are some advanced stuff in there. And I think I really wrote this book for my audience. And if they want to know what I think about investing in shares, this is the book. But I'm not here to talk about a dumb book. I'm here to just talk money and investing.
Well, that's what we love talking about on the show, getting our finances sorted so we can get on with the fun stuff in life. And I think that was the important thing that you discussed at the very start. I know you don't want to talk about the book too much, but the what is your why? Because that really underlines everything we do with money. There's no point just investing for the sake of it. I think it really has to be for something. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what is your why, and then we could kind of expand that to how listeners can find their own why.
Yeah, and it probably will link kind of back to investing. But for me, throughout this project of, putting all this stuff together and talking with other listeners, talking with other investors, talking with people who wanted to invest and start investing. And I'm not even talking investing in shares. I'm talking about my sister million years ago, buy the investment property, 10 minutes later have to sell the property. Like, we do all this stuff because it's easy, and it's easy to invest in shares. So I've learned it's easy to invest, but it's harder to stay invested. And the reason it's hard to stay invested is because you might not have your ducks in a row. For example, you might not have a basic budget. It's like, I've got money saved for car registration, home insurance, if I want to buy my first home and save for that, excluding the first home super saver scheme. So this all kind of gets down, and in the book I actually talked about like a financial bedrock. So you've got to get to your financial bedrock. Like, what is your why? Then, what do you think money is? Then we can go, well, how's it to be managed? So this whole why thing, and I'm probably guilty of harping on about this too much, twice a week on my podcast. But coming from a financial advice background, when you have a client walk in your door, and this is everyone, if you go to a financial advisor and the first meeting they're not asking about you and your life, and they go straight into solution mode or returns or shares or structures, walk out. Because it's all got to come back to, what is your why? What are your goals? What does 5 years look like to you in a perfect world? So we have to take the time to do that. And I use some examples in the book, like some people, and you see it on TikTok, you see it on Insta Reels, you see it on Reddit, you see it in Facebook groups. There are legitimately people that just want to get rich, because if I can just get rich, all my problems will go away. And I know so many wealthy people that have got lots of problems. I've tried to make my problems go away with money.
Didn't work?
Didn't work. It's really annoying. They say money doesn't make you happy, but hey, I'll try. I'll give it a shake. But I really think your why can't be, well, I just want to get rich. And like, I'm gonna flip it on you. This is my podcast now, Kate.
Yeah.
What do you think your why is when it comes to money and investing?
I like having control and independence over my life and my choices, and having my financial foundation sorted gives me a lot more choices. And even though they're small choices now, over time, as I build wealth, I'm going to have more and more options to do what I want to do, like live in the country.
Yeah, that's cool. So for me, from a young age, as part of my money story, I was self-aware enough to be annoying to myself. And I was like, I remember when I was 16 years old going to a community college. I don't even know if they still have them. They're probably
TAFE?
Lower.
Oh, right.
Like literally, this is Saturday afternoon session on investing in shares.
Okay.
And I was a 16-year-old, went to that community college.
They still have like continuing adult education,
It might all
CAE,
be.
University of Third Age, those kind of things.
Yeah, and like I was going to these things in my teens because I knew that to be financially successful, and my why probably hadn't been developed then, but I had to stop trading my time for money if I really wanted choices.
It's pretty early to have that realization.
Yeah. And that's the goal, right? I crap on about this whole loot thing, life on your own terms. That's my why. I want to do life on my own terms. And that means I can't actually commit 8 hours a day at a desk or on a screwdriver or a drill, because I did a trade when I left school. I can't do that because I can't live my life on my own terms if I'm using my hands. I need to use my mind. So for me, my why is basically I don't want to be tied to time to produce income. And if we've got income and we've got wealth behind us, we have the best shot of having a fulfilled life. Now, that doesn't mean my problems go away. So I've tried to, build my life and have all life on my own terms and all that. And I was on, the investing podcast with Owen last year. He talked about my mental health issues. Like, you can have all the money in the world, it doesn't make all your problems go away. But it can remove stress and it can give you more options. And I've got a really interesting philosophy about kind of, that's kind of my why. And then when it comes to investing, my mindset about investing, like why I invest and whatnot.
So the way you invest enables the life on your own terms.
Yes. Well, I think I live my life on my own terms and as much as I can, because we can't control everything. And then when I invest, so I talk in the book about my sound financial house, building you mentioned at the start, like strong foundations. So I've set up my financial life. So I've got strong and sound financial foundations. I've got a spending plan. I've got an emergency fund. I've got a savings account for short-term goals. I've got giving and generosity covered. And then it's like, okay, well, I've got this leftover money. Well, I'm no longer investing this to get the best return in the world and 20% year on year. My philosophy with investing is Glen James has excess wealth in his life and fortunate enough to have that. After living, after some luxuries, after giving, and it just gets put to work for the Glen of tomorrow. And the return I'm after is probably, as long as it's above cash and inflation, I'm chill long term.
And that's the good thing about knowing your why, is it means that you don't have to take a lot of risk with your money, risk beyond the point of a positive return, basically.
Yeah, and I think you read the chapters where I talked about that, where we profiled a young lady. She started her career, for example, and wanted to invest in, shares, for example. And So if she had $10,000 to invest, to double that, to make it a $20,000 portfolio, she would need a 100% return. Now, the type of investments that you would need to get a 100% return, you don't want to be playing around in that section with 100% of your money. So the question is, can this individual invest in their career, use time and get, trained up more and go after their, dream role and get that pay rise longer term? And then it's a long-term annuity that never stops. And you're not putting 100% of your wealth at risk to get 100% return.
That's the thing at the start of your career, especially. It's much easier to earn $1,000 from your career than your investment portfolio.
That's right. And they say, don't worry about the return on your investment, quote unquote, until you're really over 100 grand, because the best movement of the needle in your portfolio is your own capital that you add. Like if you had a $10,000 portfolio, you want a 50% return on that? Well, sell half the crap in your house and put $5 grand in there. Your portfolio's just increased 50%.
Or get a $5 pay rise.
That's an annuity that will never, because how often, once you get a pay rise and you're operating in that sphere, that you go backwards long term? Like, sure, you might have to go backwards to retrain, reskill. But I think I mentioned, we've got the career book, Sort Your Career Out. It was a dumb analogy. I'll repeat it. It's like the bow and arrow. So you pull the bow back, the bow's probably thinking, what the hell's happening? I was supposed to be going forward, but it's going back and then let's go, and then it shoots forward. See, you look like you've just seen a ghost. It's a bad analogy. It was a terrible joke. Yeah, I'm a big believer of because remember, investing is the easy part. Staying invested is the hard part. To stay invested, you need your why nailed. You need your career nailed. You need your goals nailed. You need to stay away from consumer debt.
A lot of people listening would be invested in ETFs, maybe some shares. A lot of listeners are using the core and satellite approach. Maybe they have a first home or an investment property. How would you suggest that people can stay invested beyond just that why? Especially when they're reading headlines and getting nervous and their parents are saying, you should do this, not that.
Yeah. So, the saying, past performance is no indication of future performance.
I think it's ingrained into my tombstone.
Yes, it is. Mine too. However, I think it's half a load of crap and half a compliance statement. Because if you think over the long term, if you stay invested in a broad-based index, ASX 200 or the S&P 500, past performance of that index over time means if you're invested long enough, you will not lose out. And what I would say to everybody, and we had someone ask this question at one of our live events the other day, and they were like, hey, like the world's going to hell in a handbasket, whatever that saying is from a million years ago. Markets are hot. We've got Middle East happening. We've got inflation's sticky, like all the worst things, right? So for me, I go back to when I commit money to my investing account or to my investing, so residential or commercial property that I have as investments, that money is committed for the long term. And I've had to learn over the years that over time, bad things happen.
Yeah.
But just because, and this is the crazy thing, everyone, like if you think, I'm knocking on 40's door, Kate, believe it or not, right? It's wild.
Oh, I'm very shocked, Glenn.
I'm shocked. I'm so shocked right now. Let's say I've got 25 years to go to 65. Lord willing, all that stuff, right? I'm a bit of high blood pressure at the moment, guys, but I'm hanging in there. Now, over this 25-year period, if I'm investing for the Glen of age 60 or 65 and I commit capital tomorrow, what does it matter if it comes off 5% in the short term, like 12 months. What does it matter?
Ultimately, it doesn't.
No. And this is where but this is, again, investing is easy, staying invested is hard.
Yeah.
And that's what I've like this book, I'm reading it when I'm like, this is an encouraging word to me because all this behavior stuff, no one is above it. And part of my strategy is to use broad-based index funds. I don't have, the investment apps on my phone. Once money's committed, it's good night for the long term. Sure, there's regular maintenance. I talked the other day, I had my S&P 500 account, which is in the book. It's funny, in the book, right? Because everyone's like, Glenn, what investments do you use? I'm like, it's a little one called Mind Your Own Business. It's mine. Do your listeners hate me? Probably do.
I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. Hi, everyone. Love you. Ooh, tough crowd. No. So in the book, I use practical examples.
Yeah.
But also because I'm talking about investing in different products, and I actually disclose in the back the investments and the platforms that I have, just for transparency.
I didn't get to the back.
Hey, yeah, look out. So I've got an S&P 500 fund, one of my ETFs. That money is committed to long-term growth. I recently purchased a commercial property, okay, because I'm sick of residential property. It's just crazy and wild, and that's a whole other debate and podcast. So I sold down some of that S&P 500 and put into the commercial property. Oh, why did you sell shares, Glenn? Like, shouldn't you hold them for the long term? Well, I just see it as it's still invested in growth, just a little rebalance. Sure, might have had a minor tax event, but I've made the view I want to put some of that capital into this property here because I think that opportunity is better. So that's staying invested. It's not me saying I need to sell the S&P 500 ETF because the world's crazy. It's hot markets. We're at all-time highs with the ASX, all this stuff. It stayed invested. It just got reallocated to another asset, another growth asset.
And that's part of the investing journey. You will sell different parts of your portfolio at times. You might have invested for 10 years and now you're in the position to buy the family home.
Absolutely.
And you will sell some of your investments, but that means they've probably achieved what you went out for.
Yeah. I was talking to someone the other day. They're moving back to an area that they grew up in, right? And they've got a home that they own in that area. And when they moved away to another capital city, they put a tenant in that home. They were in that other capital city for maybe 8 years. They bought a home. They've done well. And a friend was saying to me the other day, why would they sell the properties when they're moving and they want to buy their new family home back in the town they were from? I'm like, well, it's probably a waste of all that equity just sitting there and not buying a house with it and having less deductible debt. You can buy the house and then re-borrow and buy another house. But yeah, and that's the thing. They're not selling their assets and buying fast cars and so
just buying another asset.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is who do you listen to when it comes to investing? Because, you'll talk to people out on the street that don't get, why would you invest? It's like gambling, or shouldn't you sell now, or why are you selling that? No one knows your why. No one knows your bedrock. And I think it's good that, with the Australian Finance Podcast, the listeners, you're listening, you're keeping encouraged. And if that helps you stay invested, that there's other people like you, that's awesome.
And that's a huge reason why many people do listen to the podcast. It's just for help with the stay invested part, because once you've got your ETF portfolio set up, you understand the basics. You don't have to keep learning more and more and more. You don't need to keep leveling up and adjusting your portfolio all the time. So it's just that encouragement to stay invested, contribute regularly, not freak out when there's another headline, because there's always another headline. Or
change your philosophy. And this is the help with stay invested. When there is a correction, I'm happy to catch a falling knife because I'm a long-term holder. I want long-term positions. So I'm happy to catch that falling knife because it's not as if I'm trying to trade in the short term and, all right, I'll buy now because it's going to bounce next week. So And if for those that don't know what that falling knife is, as the share price comes off, you buy it, and then the next day or the next week it decreases again, and you're like, oh, I'll buy it again because it's going to go up next week. Sounds like crypto trading, but that's another thing. So when there are market cycles, it's okay to buy assets when they're low. Like, that's the whole thing. Buy low and hold. It's not buy, hold, and sell high. But on that, we in Australia, we think that the retirement age is 65 or 67, right? That's the whole thing. And you can retire whenever you want. The question is, well, where are you going to get the money from? But
isn't that joke where, I could retire today, but I would only last for a week?
Yes.
On my current level of assets.
But back to that magical age of 65 that I was talking about before, when I get to age 60 or 65 and you're like, all right, I've had enough, I want to retire, that's not getting your superannuation and selling it all down to cash and putting it in your bank account. That money still needs to work for another 20 years. So the money I'm investing today, it's got a big bloody career of about 40 years and it needs to go to work. Jerry Seinfeld had a joke. I sent my money to work and I got fired. I just think it's that mindset piece, and particularly that first part of the book that I wrote with Nick Bradley, who hosts our podcast, This Is Investing, because I said to him, we'll do this book, but I'm not doing any of the technical crap. Don't have time for it. I don't care for it.
It's not how I invest.
That's not how I invest. But Nick, he buys single stocks. He trades single stocks. He does options and covered calls and all that stuff. Now, we both agree that with those type of strategies, we don't use more than 10% of our portfolio because you could get flushed, but he genuinely likes buying options and writing contracts, and he likes a watch list and he likes doing that.
Do you think having an awareness of how to invest in individual companies and how they work and how to look at an annual report actually informs your perspective as an investor, even if you come back and just have a really simple ETF portfolio?
I think is
it necessary even to go down that path?
I don't think so. I don't.
So you could just read half the book?
Yeah. I mean, I don't ever look at individual share annual books. Actually, whatever month you kind of get me.
So I wouldn't catch you on looking through the Wes Farmers annual report?
No.
No.
I, at the moment, only have one single stock, and it's only been a recent purchase. I don't even know if I think when I wrote this book, I said that I don't own single stocks because it's just not a thing. I just don't care for it. But I heard a company the other day and I like the company, and it's just more of that'd be nice. But yeah. I'm not talking more than probably 2% of my portfolio. Like, it's nominal.
Just something out of interest.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's Nick's whole shtick is, I'm interested in investing. I've got my long-term retirement account. I've got my long-term ordinary money account. And then I've got a third account just for my trading, just for my Wild West stuff. And, if he does well, he'll move that money and commit it to the long term. But, we both agree that we have the same philosophy about, we don't do stuff like that, Wild West stuff, with more than 10% of our portfolio.
I do find investing in individual companies is a really good way to learn about the world around you. You can do that any other way, but just having a few companies that you're interested in, following, looking at their updates, it just gives you a slightly different perspective. I don't think it's necessary, but...
Well, and this is it's so weird. I've got a flippant investing book here, right? And I still get caught up with the behavior stuff. We talk about a bit of behavior stuff. I asked some people that are really talented and institutional investors for their comments around behavioral investing. And I even find myself like, I need to buy that stock. And it's like, well, hang on. You've already got exposure to it. Remember how an index works. You don't need to move along.
Sometimes you just have to remind yourself that I've already got that in my super fund. I've already got that in my ETF portfolio as well.
So my focus in life is to go to work, live on less than I earn, be a generous giver, and shovel the rest of it into long-term investing. It's pretty simple.
Very simple investing plan.
Yeah.
Money plan, life plan.
Yeah,
Keep it simple.
totally.
I liked how you made it really simple in the book by just saying this is my 3-point plan for managing my money, because we often get caught up thinking it has to be very complicated. We need a big spreadsheet. We need a big Google Doc writing down all of this investment philosophy, strategy, planning, research, but it doesn't have to be.
No, and I wanted to make this book for those who are just starting. Like, how do I start? Actually, the first kind of intro, and I kind of did this as a bit of a hook. At the very start, investing is easy. I'll show you. You could download an investment app. Popular ones are Superhero and Sharesies. Open an account, transfer some money over to your account, buy the ETF IOZ, and voila, you are now invested in 200 of the top Australian companies in only one transaction. You have some diversification, so your risk is spread, and your record keeping and tax reporting is taken care of each year. You might want to do this with as much money as you can, as regularly as you can, for as long as you can, and you might not try and sell. Consider reinvesting. Over time, you'll build so much wealth that you won't know what to do with it all. So investing is easy. Just do that. Pump IOZ. You'll be fine.
If only it was that easy, we wouldn't have a podcast.
Well, but this is the thing.
It's the behavior.
It's the behavior. And I kind of had to, and it's a bit of an evolution with my podcast. I'm not the guru. Like, I've just had to resolve. I know nothing. Actually, there was a Jon Snow joke in the book.
Yeah, I recall.
Like, I'm not a qualified anything anymore. Actually, I've just got my boat qualification, my coxswain's
So you've
commercial
got
ticket.
one active qualification on
I've
the
got
go.
one active qualification, and I can master a vessel up to 12 meters commercially. Like, that's all I am. But the podcast and the book, if anything, it will keep you invested.
It's a coach. It's a guide. It's
So
encouragement, really.
So the simpler thing, I wanted to do it simpler, smarter, and sooner. And I'll talk about the three. Simpler, Nick talks about, as you said, how to build a simple 3-fund portfolio. And he uses examples of 3 funds that you might choose in Australia and the rationale behind that.
Yeah.
Could be the DIY portfolio in a box. We all know the favourites. Could be the VDGR, VDHG, DHHF, all the things. This is wild. There is nothing new out there. Investing is easy. Staying invested is hard. Smarter. Okay, Nick tells you in a chapter, and this is what I said to Nick, you can write the bloody chapters. Like, there's an advanced chapter here, how to value individual stocks. I'm like, Chapter 6, build your portfolio, single share investing. He goes through how to value and understand the basic business model, company management stuff, talks about the 6 investment ratios and with examples. Like, if you want to be smarter, this will scratch your itch. Now, the sooner part, the reason I wanted to talk about get invested sooner, if you aren't already invested, is it will show you how in a simple way. But there is this thing in the money world where it's like, don't invest unless you're out of consumer debt. Don't invest if you don't have an emergency fund. Don't invest if you don't have 3 vials of unicorn tears. Like, so there is that notion of line your ducks up before you worry about investing. And I was kind of thinking, like, how can there be a way to keep people invested and engaged before the ducks are in a row? And with my financial advisor, money guy, purist hat on, it's like, get out of bloody debt, set your emergency fund up, get your insurances, get a budget, then worry about investing. Because you are an investor already if you've got a job, because you've got super. So can you call your super fund or log on and just see how that works and be engaged? But it's good to have skin in the game. So I talk in the book about, well, what if you are in debt? It could be a good motivation to allocate a small portion to investing and starting tomorrow.
Because some of these things take years to get out of debt,
exactly.
to build your emergency fund.
And I need you fired up and encouraged enough that you're invested as like, as soon as I get out of this consumer debt, credit card or personal loan, that $300 a month, I'm not using it for food or going out. I'm going to just add it to the $20 a month that I'm putting in my investing account, and we're turning this up to 11. So that's kind of the mindset part about sooner. So you can get invested sooner, but also pay off your debt and get your emergency fund in order.
And that's the great thing about all the micro investing apps
Yes.
and the fractional investing apps. You can put your $5 in a week and learn about investing while you're paying off debt.
Yeah. But we just don't want to be, messing around and putting... And there's a diagram that I use. And I'll just say it to your listeners. If you are struggling to get out of debt... So even in the book, everyone, if you write this down, page 30, I'm just kind of thinking I'm a big believer in some general guides and rules of thumb. One of my general guide or rule of thumb is if I travel overseas, or if someone says, what's the best card to use overseas? My general rule of thumb is if you stick away from the top 4 banks, you'll be fine. Like, that's just a general rule. Like, it doesn't matter if it's ING, if it's Wise, if it's HSBC card. Stick away from the top 4 and it'll be cheaper. That's just a rule of thumb. So for me, the rule of thumb is like, so I kind of am in consumer debt, or I kind of don't have my emergency fund, because having the emergency fund, and this is my biggest problem, I'm a personal finance guy. And I believe in all these things. Like, the emergency fund means that if there is an emergency and you've got cash dedicated for emergencies, it enables you to keep invested, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
It's easy to invest. It's harder to stay invested. So if you do have debt, or if you do have all that stuff you want to clean up, I've got a guide, page 30. If you're on $50,000 a year income, we just call it 1%. Don't invest more than $500 a year or $41 a month. And I just go up to 90 grand, $900 a year or $75 a month. 80 grand, 66 a month. 70 grand, 58 a month. Now, I just think it's a good guide. You might go, well, I've got a 70 grand income. I'm going to do 58 a month, but I don't want to not have my coffee twice a week. Okay, we'll just do 50 a month. Just have a guide, just have a rule of thumb, and this will keep you invested. Now, actually, on the next page, I talk about the behavioural budget structures. So in business, we've heard of the top-down budget and the bottom-up budget, okay? And for those who are listening who have just finished school or university, who aren't embedded into life with every leech hanging off your budget... you might want to do the top-down budget, which could mean earning first, then the flow chart, commit money to investing, then commit money to short-term savings, less than 5 years, then spend. But I teach people with their budgeting, if you're incumbent in the life thing that we're living, and you've got an income, you've got all these expenses, it's really hard to hear someone on a podcast or on TikTok. Like, you think, I've got 2 kids, I've got a mortgage, I've got school fees. This guy or gal's telling me, just invest 20% of your income and you'll be fine. That's cute. Not happening. So what you really need to do, you need to look at earning. So we're doing the bottom-up budget, which is earning, then expenses. Let's optimize our expenses. Then we might save for some short-term goals. Then we invest. So, and that's why personal finance, it is personal.
A 30-second clip is not going to answer all of your questions. And that's the thing. There's so much nuance to everything. And you have to think about what's important to me. What's my situation? What's my why? How am I going to invest with that in mind? Not just seeing something on the internet and feeling upset that you can't achieve it.
Like, we hear this stuff. I actually had, Effie from Today's Show, Effie Zahos.
Yep.
Yeah, I had her on my show.
She's fantastic.
Yeah, we had such a great chat. We hadn't actually met before.
Oh, really?
So the first time we met was like Riverside, the podcast app. Like, hey, record. Hey, everyone, sorry, I'm getting to know Effie. She does a zero-based budget. There is nothing that raises my blood pressure apart from bacon, than hearing zero-based budget, because that to me is restrictive. It's like,
Is that where every dollar has to be allocated?
Yeah.
I can never stay in a category.
No. And I'm just like, life's too short, don't care.
Yeah.
I would rather spend more going out this weekend and have cereal tomorrow night because I couldn't afford Woolworths. But that's what I'm happy with.
Yeah.
She loves her zero-based budget. So I think the older I get and the more annoying I get is I've learned I just want to give people some things to think about. And this book really, in terms of just your investing, whether you have already invested, whether you want to start investing, or whether you want to get a bit more nerdy and start to look at all the Greek signals, the gammas, the deltas, and all that stuff, and put your toe in options just out of personal interest. So this book, I've tried to make it chocolate for investing. But then again, some people were like, I don't like chocolate. I wanted to please everyone.
As opposed to vanilla?
Well, chocolate, you can kind of please most people, can't you?
I don't know. A lot of people don't have dairy these days.
It's true.
Maybe gelato.
Oh, we had Messina last night. Love Messina. Do you like Messina?
I've been a few times. Yeah.
I got Messina shoes. They're their limited edition high tops.
Did you wear them to the store?
I did. Messina.
This podcast is very rogue.
Yeah, welcome to my life. Your
Is this what
listeners
it's
are
like if you're a listener of This Is Money?
Oh yeah, it's wild. But that's it. It's so funny. I just love when I go to your events, because we all have, because people say to me in the podcast world, who's your competition? Is it like Kate at Rask? I'm like, no, there's no competition, because if you don't like my vibe, I can't help you.
We're all very different.
Yeah, that's right. So we just, this is us. And I love your audience because they're so dialed in and calm, collected. And then I go to one of your live events and mess it all up.
You shake it up. You provide some excitement.
I really do, yeah.
I guess I'll pick one more question from my list, because we kind of went completely all over the place.
We did.
But it's something that people ask all the time. And it's, how do you balance enjoying today, enjoying the present, enjoying going on holiday this year, while saving and investing and putting things aside for your future, because I've only got so much income and I could only split it so many ways?
This is a very interesting question. And I reckon probably if you're under 40 at the moment, you have not, or thereabouts, like millennial, you probably have never lived in such a cost of living crunch before. Okay. So we're all doing this for the first time, and it's very expensive out there. And what I would say with this, juggling the future us with the needs and wants of today, when things get tight financially, you have to really, really get micro with your budget and spending. Now, there is only 4 things that you can do. And this is wild, Kate, because everyone's thinking, shut up, talk about investing, don't talk about budgets. No, you nail this crap, you can invest in whatever you want and it'll stay invested. Because investing is easy, staying invested is hard. There are only 4 things that you can do with your budget at any time. The first one is increase income. So you could literally do overtime if possible, find a high paying job if possible, get a pay rise if possible, might not do a side hustle if possible. That first one, getting a more income, that might not be possible, okay? The second thing you can do, which is probably the least desirable, is to decrease savings, okay? Now, when I say savings, I'm talking about cash left over to save as cash in your account for goals or investing for the future, okay? The third thing you can do is review a category. I always like to pick on streaming services. You might go, okay, streaming category, we're paying for Netflix, we're paying for Paramount, we're paying for Stan.
And they've all increased their prices.
They all have. So we review that category and say, okay, we're going to get rid of those 2 subscriptions and just have that one. Could be the gym category. I pay for the gym, I pay for a PT, I pay for private Pilates instructor or whatever. Okay, we're going to review that, get rid of the PT and just do Pilates in the gym. The 4th thing that we can do with our budget is cut something out completely. Not paying for any subscriptions, line category. Not paying for any health and fitness. Choose your thing, but that's just structurally what you can do with the budget. The optimum thing to do would be to increase income, review a line item and cut something and not decrease your savings. Now, to your question about how do we balance the needs and wants of today versus the needs and wants of our future? Well, we do that with great difficulty. That's the answer. But I would encourage you, there's one part of it, if you're really struggling, I need you to not worry about tomorrow, today, and just worry about today. Just because you need to be still standing in a year's time financially. Like, I don't want you to go, oh, I've got to invest, so I'm keeping my salary sacrifice going to super. Oh, I'll just use Afterpay now and I'll just get a credit card for the day-to-day because it's just a cash flow thing. No, it's actually cost more to live at the moment. So that might mean you have to reduce what you're investing. Now, thankfully, we are in Australia, and thankfully, we now get 11.5% into our superannuation. So you're going to be all good, but I'm not stressing about, do I feed my family? Do I invest in IOZ? Like, it's pretty simple. Now, but there has to be some type of line in the sand where you might be like, look, I'm literally just pausing all my investing for the next 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, we'll come up and review. But you can only really do this once you've actually done a decent spending plan, because you need to know what you're actually dealing with. And if you don't know how much is coming in and how much is going out, even just annualize it all, do it over a year. Okay, we've got $2,000 left for the year. $2,000 divided by 52, bam, we've got that much left per week of breathing space. That's a good start. You need to know where you're at. But I would say it's kind of like the analogy that I use, have you been to LA?
No.
Okay. You go to LA, every restaurant, there's wait staff who are going to be actors. Like, everyone, like, it's, hey bro, how are you? Oh, good. Yeah. What do you do? Oh, yeah, I'm just doing extras work and all that. And I'm like, okay, well, you're 65 now and haven't made your break. There's been a lot of opportunity cost. So I think if you're an aspiring actor, content creator, musician, you need to really be strategic and go, I'm going to run at this for 12 months, for 2 years, for 3 years. And then at the end of this period, come up for air. Is this working or not? If it is working, double down. If it isn't, change tack. And that could be, don't give up acting, don't give up music, don't give up your art, but don't rely on it as your parachute. And you're thinking, what's that got to do with investing for the future? Well, thanks for not asking. But the same thing, if you pause your investing, I need you to have a line in the sand so you don't end up being 60 years old. Oh, we've got nothing.
So really having a date to review it.
Yeah, like, okay, things are tight at the moment. Awesome. We know that the kids finish school in 2 years. Let's just survive. Let's just get them through school. Then their school fees categorically are going to super. Those school fees categorically paying down the mortgage. And that's okay. That's normal. You get on TikTok and see all these things with people saying this stuff. That's not reality. I just want, when my mouth moves, I want it to be as much reality as I can. When I write these books, I want practical reality, real life examples. But if you are pressing pause for today, I would challenge you to set an alarm 6 months and 12 months. Because if you're 12 months or 2 years down the track, and it's like we still haven't invested any more for our future where we were before, the cost of living and all that, the question is, are there some structural things that aren't right in your financial life? Now, I'm talking about structural things. Are you paying too much for cars? Are you paying too much for rent? Relatively, I know it's a rental crisis. is your mortgage too big for what the reality is of your income?
Yeah. I think the pressing pause does have to have a time frame. You can't just press pause forever. And maybe there's some other things you can focus on in the meantime. And it's okay to press pause for a while, but you've got to unpause.
Yeah.
Press play. There we go.
I
forgot the word.
That's right. And then it's like if you come up for air, I was actually chatting to someone last night. They wanted to start a podcast or a YouTube channel. And I said to them, okay, my unsolicited advice is you need to pick a 12 months or whatever, make a commitment to go hard, publish a show once a week for 12 months, look for signs of life. At the end of the 12 months, make a call. Because that's what I did. At the end of the 12 months, it was like, yep, signs of life here, we're doubling down. At the end of the 12 months, if it wasn't working, I need to cut and I need to pivot and do something else, because the opportunity cost, this is, if you want to get into the investing wildness, there is a higher risk of not investing than investing. And that, that meme where it's just like the four images of it's like the skull, and then the next one's like the light, and then the next one is like the stars and the brains. Like, have you seen that meme? Money? Yeah. Have you? No?
Might be a bit past me.
Okay. It's like it's the next level.
Yeah.
And that with your investing, I'm at the level knowing that if I don't invest my money, that's a high risk of investing it, because I categorically know investing isn't gambling. I categorically know that once I invest and hold it for 25 years, it's all Gucci, baby. I categorically know that there are going to be some extra buying opportunities. If markets drop, if I've got a bit of an opportunity fund that I use for cash. I don't time the market, except if there's an opportunity and there's an ETF and it drops, I'll back the truck up and tip some money in.
That's the thing, isn't it, Glenn? Having all your money in cash in the short term is low risk, but in the long term, it is extremely high risk.
Yep. So, yeah, there is more of a risk not to invest. But then it goes back to, it's like, this is why I've written this book last of the few that I've written, because, the career book, sort your career out. I think you've had Shell on the show.
Oh, she's fantastic.
Yeah, like that book is the prequel to my money books. Forget investing. Invest in your career and yourself. That's the biggest annuity. Because without money walking in the door, paying for your expenses, and hopefully there's leftover amounts, well, without that, you can't invest. And as we said at the start, it's probably easier to try and get a $5,000 pay rise than to save $5,000. And after those words leave my mouth, I always think of those who might be nurses, who might be school teachers, who can't just knock on the principal or the num's door and say, give me more money, please. It doesn't become a job discussion. It becomes a career discussion.
Glenn, we've covered a lot in this show. I think there's a lot of tips for people to stay invested, not just get invested, because that's more important long term, that we stay invested. We've talked about understanding our why. We've talked about managing our money really simply, having a 3-point plan. Can listeners think about how they can build their own 3-point plan?
Yeah. And I think I've got some examples in there.
Yeah, you have plenty of ideas and thought starters for people who are trying to work out what this might look like for them. And I love that you have so many examples, because it's going to be different for everyone that reads it. But at the end, we all want more choices. We want more security. We want a better financial future. We want to provide for our families. So I think everyone's why looks somewhat similar. It might come out differently on paper, but it looks somewhat similar. And I think this book's fantastic. It covers investing, inflation, looking at US stocks, individual investing, if that's what people are interested in, risk profiles, time horizons, and staying invested.
Can I share one last thing that I'm really excited for?
Yeah.
And because you haven't got to the end of the book yet, Kate.
I've only had a week with it.
Yeah, she has. And it was a PDF.
And I had a book club book to read too.
That's right. So at the end, I made these things called a personal investing constitution. So when you've got your goal, you basically go down and there's some examples there. So there's about 8 different case studies in the book of different life scenarios, like someone just starting out investing, a family that's self-employed with complex stuff, someone who wants to invest for their niece or nephew, anyway, it's got heaps of examples. And I've made like an investing constitution because I'll say it once more, it's easy to get invested, but
it's hard to stay invested.
Yep. So this constitution, when the crap gets hard out there, this example from Rebecca, the goal is to live on less than I earn, invest the rest of my money outside super for the long term. This will give me the option to cease work before the superannuation preservation age or replace part of my income with my non-retirement assets. So it's all about putting your why on paper, putting your time horizon, your asset allocation, the ownership structure and the vehicle. I talk in here about the 6 different ownership structures and again, a bit more advanced, the advantages and disadvantages of tax and estate planning.
Yep. So talking about investing in a trust, individual name,
in a
that
company.
kind of thing.
And so, look, I think there's value in that for a lot of your listeners, and I hope that you'll put a little affiliate link and make some money off that for yourself.
Yep. Wonderful. Well, I'm sure it'll be for sale right now at Dimmicks, Amazon, Booktopia, wherever people get books these days. Monique still buys things on eBay, so it's probably available on eBay.
And the affiliate link for the team at Rask in the show notes, so support Rask.
Wonderful. I'll make sure that's done. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for coming down to Melbourne and joining us on the show.
Awesome. We'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.